Top 30 Hoops recruit Cameron Holmes is staying home. Tommy Lloyd landed his first commit to Arizona in the 2026 recruiting class.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Leaf Tulane, your resident college basketball guru, stats nerd, point guard by game, and ball knower by trade. And I'm excited to talk Arizona hoops with you today. We got a little football, a little recruiting as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your pet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Today on the show, we're going to discuss the huge commitment of Cameron Holmes to Arizona, what it means on the recruiting path going forward, touch on Noah Fafita and the Wildcats' come-from-behind win over Kansas, propelling the Wildcats into bowl eligibility, and talk Arizona's good, the bad, the ugly in the win over Utah Tech. So let's dive right in. Arizona landed a top 30 player in the 2026 basketball recruiting rankings, and it's even bigger than that. He's from the state of Arizona, and it is impressive to keep those guys home, and it's also imperative to keep those guys home, and he is just the first stone to be turned. Let's talk about him and his games. Cameron Holmes, the 6'6" small forward, is a top 30 recruit overall by just about every service. Top 35 is as low as you'll find him. So very, very good player, 4-star by all services. And his top three were Arizona. Of course, he chose the Wildcats. Dayton, where his older brother played. We'll get to that in a moment. And North Carolina, who has a certain track record for success with wings, especially with Caleb Wilson balling out there right now. The Wildcats had the crystal ball per 247 when I talked about this about a week ago, and now we no longer have to speculate. He's heading to Tucson and will be a key player both next season and in the recruiting future of recruits in his class, namely Cameron Williams, who's a top 5 recruit in the country, who also has Arizona as top 3 and also happens to be from the state of Arizona. So back to Holmes. He's the younger brother of Nuggets power forward Dayron Holmes, who was an All-American 2 seasons ago with Dayton, whom I actually saw live in Salt Lake City at the Delta Center at March Madness, where Arizona beat Dayton after Dayton came from behind and beat Nevada, and I watched them duel it out. So maybe he was there and saw Arizona firsthand on that team that made the Sweet 16. The elder Holmes brother, Dayron Holmes, was a first-round pick by the Denver Nuggets, so got some talent. The Arizona recruit has some serious genes working in his favor and some giant shoes to fill following his brother's fantastic career, but I don't think it's out of the ordinary to expect him to thrive here in Tucson. He has the genes, he's got the skills, so let's dive into his game. He's different than his brother. First things first, let's look at the frame because that's where the difference lies. He has solid measurables for his position. He's 6'6" with a 6'9" wingspan, good athleticism, functional strength without boasting a ton of visible muscle mass, right? His brother was taller, but slender and wasn't necessarily a guy who could shift ends of the floor amazingly. But he was very, very coordinated, skilled, and a fantastic defender. And he took a lot of time to grow and put on the muscle mass, which helped propel him to be an All-American in his junior season for the Dayton Flyers. According to recruiting expert Adam Finkelstein, here is the offensive analysis on Cameron Holmes. It says, and I quote, offensively, he can attack the rim in straight lines, absorb contact, or bully his way into the mid-post. He's improved as a shooter and can make open catch-and-shoot threes when he has a room and rhythm. While he doesn't have a ton of wiggle creation or tough shot making, he's a reliable decision maker who generally knows how to play and makes quick, simple decisions with the ball. He had 2.3 assists per turnover in EYBL play, and most recently started to move more without the ball and show flashes of being a good cutter. So, that's a great analysis that gives you the overarching theme of how he plays. Here's what I love. I love about Cameron Holmes that he has the willingness already to not always be the dude. And not everyone has that from a young age. And what makes me believe in his ability to buy into team first ball is knowing how unselfishly his brother played as an All-American. I know they're different players, but you watch him play, and you say, okay, this guy's got all the athletic traits in the world. His brother plays in the NBA. You expect him to hog the ball. No, he makes the right decisions. He's willing to play off the ball, and he's willing to not shoot the first time he touches it. Not only is he athletic in the open court, he is able to score in the half court and also is willing to play a role in the half court. He doesn't have to be the star with the ball at all times. And that is very, very rare for a guy who's a top 35 recruit. Now, you think about what Arizona's had that fit those mold, right? What he has to do is buy into shooting good shots, playing team first basketball, and playing within Arizona's excellent offense, which we've talked about ad nauseum, where guys like Ivan Karchenkov are thriving this year. Dwayne Aristode's also playing that same role. Before those guys were Carter Bryant, KJ Lewis, Pelle Larssons of the world, guys that have the talent to be NBA players. Carter Bryant was a 14th pick, a lottery pick. Pelle Larsson is playing in the NBA. And he has that same level of talent, but there's at least a pathway at Arizona to having success without being the guy with the ball in his hands. Carter Bryant was not a double-digit scorer last year, went in the lottery because he was willing to play basketball the right way, defend his tail off, rebound the ball, run, shoot open shots, and be an intelligent player. The pathway is there. Be athletic, play hard, and play the right way, and you'll see the dividends immediately in the form of playing time from Coach Tommy Lloyd. Now let's get to the quote about defense. Defensively, has a pretty good foot speed laterally with I'll restart that. Defensively, has pretty good foot speed, some potential versatility, and a relatively high steal rate, 1.5 per game. Even if there are moments where he defends with his arms at his side, he's also a dependable rebounder on the wing. I would argue in watching him play that defensively, his instincts are very good. His foot speed is solid. I wouldn't say it's spectacular. He's not Carter Bryant level gifted lateral mover, but he's got this disruptive ability on knowing where the ball is that impresses me, and I do like his rebounding. So what is his role for Arizona next year and in the future? That's a great question, because next year the Cats could look different with Wildcat wing spots wide open depending on what happens. Like Ivan Karchenkov in a world could be a pro. Maybe Burries comes back. Maybe he's gone. I think Koa Pete's going to be gone. So I think there's a pathway he plays right away, and seemingly he could be a multi-year guy. I think talent-wise, he's probably a multi-year guy. I don't see one and done right away. Bottom line is, though, he may not be the offensive focal point, but he'll be able to play a couple positions, be reliable on both ends of the ball, and contribute to winning. He projects as a multi-year guy, and that I think is a good thing. It'll be awesome because the transfer portal makes it difficult because there are fewer in the entire country, fewer prominently featured freshmen, and that makes it hard for some. They don't wait their turn. He doesn't seem to be in a rush, and knowing that his brother wasn't, knowing that his brother's in the NBA, there's no rush to make a ton of money. There's money now in the NIL. There's fewer of those guys that need to be in a rush. And Arizona is now becoming a marquee destination for those guys who are highly regarded freshmen who want to play winning basketball, because Arizona landed 2 5-stars this past year who are playing massive roles. They have other freshmen like Aristode and Karchenkov who are playing big roles, not massive, but big roles. And Arizona should be thrilled about this development because he's the first stone to be turned in that class, right? Not only is he the first, but he's also from Arizona. There's one other guy from Arizona who plays a very prominent role in this recruiting process. So you got to keep the local guys in town and great things happen. That's what happened with Koa Pete. And that brings me to the crown jewel of this upcoming recruiting class. That's Cameron Williams, who has Arizona in his final 3. And I saw a fellow, and what he saw is what we all just saw, a fellow Arizona native going to Arizona, and they both have certainly watched how the Wildcats feature the youngsters. Karchenkov in the path of Holmes, 12-10 in the opener. Koa Pete, 37-5 in the opener. So Cameron Williams can see that and say, man, I might follow my guy Cameron Holmes here. And there's a reason I believe Arizona will become a true top-tier contender and a one-and-done factory, beginning with Koa Pete, even though I know Carter just did it. Carter Bryant just did it, but it's different because he wasn't prominently featured. He was a guy who was athletic and played his role. I think there's going to be so many guys who say, wow, Koa Pete did this at Arizona, and he's going to have an All-American type of season. Let's do with that, because what's going to happen is we're going to be featured, and we're going to play winning basketball. And this, I'm going to reread a quote I've said before. Tommy Lloyd said this at Media Day. A lot of schools focus on transfer. For us, the first thing we're going to do is look at high school kids. I'm just a big believer that these really good high school players still have to have a place to go. And so sometimes they're maybe not as valued. They're a bit more forgotten, and then they have been in the past. So we kind of fell into a group of freshmen, kind of one by one, that we felt great about. As we looked at them, we were like, for the most part, these guys are better than any transfers we could take. So let's roll with these guys. And we feel great about those decisions. As he should. Koa Pete's going to be an All-American. Brayden Burries could be an All-Big 12 type of guy. Ivan Karchenkov could be a pro after one season because he plays his role spectacularly. Tommy Lloyd believes in recruiting great players and letting them play prominent roles if they're good enough. And that's what is rare today. It's exceedingly rare to see it happen with multiple freshmen. And now, in my opinion, Arizona is a blue blood in the recruiting world, and the results will follow. And as Arizona is excellent this year, it'll just help them down the road because Koa Pete's that great. They're going to say, I can be the next Koa Pete. Just like Duke has done with Cam Boozer following Cooper Flagg, following Paolo Banchero, all that stuff. Arizona's in that ilk right now. And I think Cameron Williams is going to follow and head to Arizona. You never know. First step down the road is there, though. Cameron Holmes commits to Arizona, and Tommy Lloyd believes in recruiting great players, letting them play. And I think Arizona has taken the first step of becoming a blue blood in the recruiting trails. So speaking of good stuff, which that is all around, let's talk about what we observed from Arizona's win over Utah Tech. We'll talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly coming your way next. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long, not just on Black Friday itself. So, with up to 70% of everything off of everything from sofas to spatulas, make sure you head to Wayfair. Browsing through their site, it's easy to find pieces that actually fit my style. Nothing generic, just quality designs that feel personal. If you ever hosted family gatherings for the holidays, you know how much of a difference a few touches can make and how great a compliment will make you feel. And Wayfair makes that easy, and I guarantee you'll get complimented for your layout. So don't miss out on the early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop for Wayfair's Black Friday sale up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com, and sale ends December 7th. So make sure to head in before then. Welcome back to Locked On Wildcats. Leaf Tulane with you here. Arizona beat Utah Tech, but it didn't feel fantastic, and it wasn't necessarily supposed to, coming down from the euphoria that was beating Florida earlier in the week. But here's where I see the good in winning a game that was less than spectacular. There are three main reasons. Let's start with number one. In a game where Arizona seemed, pedestrian in terms of their explosivity, in terms of their offensive organization, they scored 93 points again in a game played at a slower tempo than the one against Florida. They were still fast, but not as fast as Arizona typically will play. And this is the most important part. And I'll just couple this into the next point, which I think is the most important point of that entire game. Arizona, they experimented in that game. They were using that as a trial. They were using that as a game to see what Brayden Burries can do, what Tobe Awaka could do. Arizona used that game as an experimentation, and in terms of when our best two players, Koa Pete and Jaden Bradley, are on the floor but are not being the aggressors that they will be in most games, and they are more or less decoys, unless the case of disaster where they're trailing and they need to be better. This is how well X player can perform. To me, the idea of this game, and I said this before for those who listen to the preview, the idea was for Brayden Burries to run the show and see what he's capable of after a poor first game. See what he can do as the leader of the team, operating the ship both as a facilitator and as a scorer. Burries, to me, was solid but unspectacular with 18 points on 16 shots. 18 points is good. I had someone text me like, oh, you're right, Burries led the way. It's a little different, though, because he took 16 shots to get there against a team like Utah Tech. But he did get to his spots. He got to the right spots, played with poise, but he was not as efficient as you'd hope in a matchup against an inferior talent-wise team. I will say Utah Tech impressed me in terms of the way they competed, and the support of Pete with an easy 18 points on 7 shots made sure this game was never really in doubt because there were moments where Arizona struggled. I'll make one more point about Koa Pete before getting back to that initial point. Koa Pete is so good and so ready to dominate. Brayden Burries did not look that way against Florida. He was closer to that against Utah Tech as he should be. But there's just such a difference. And I don't even think it's a slight on Brayden Burries. It's more of just a, oh my gosh, Koa Pete's spectacular. Because it just underlines and illustrates how fantastic Koa Pete is, how easily he gets to his spots. He elevates and scores, how much the game comes to him and how well he does when the ball's in his hands to make the proper decisions, get to the right spots and score or make the right passes. Like that is really, really impressive to me and always will be. Back to Burries and back to the initial point. Arizona was just seeing what they had against a team that was not going to be the defending champions, was not going to have the speed of guards to get Burries immediately in foul trouble and out of sync. The everydayers heard me last week mention that I expected him to be the leading scorer in this game. And he tied with Del Orso, he tied with Pete for that honor, so that's good. And the other prediction was I expected a lot of Tobe Awaka. And Awaka had 12 points on okay efficiency. You would have liked him to be a little better efficiency-wise after foul trouble against Florida. But where I said I expected dominance was on the glass. As a team, Arizona didn't quite achieve that goal. But what they did do is feature Tobe Awaka, and Tobe Awaka had 18 rebounds. So I would say that was 2 for 2 in the predictions, more or less. I'm curious to see what Brayden Burries does as the competition ramps up. Like, I want to see him play UCLA, see how good he is against UCLA. Was this practice for a team in UCLA that hasn't been particularly good yet? We'll get to that later in the week. Third point to think about is good and bad, depending how you think of it. So we'll explore both sides of it. I think there's been okay efficiency in terms of Arizona's offense and defense. Their offense has obviously been spectacular. I think their efficiency in offense was great, and they played fewer possessions, so that was still great, but mostly defense. Arizona had decent results, and the efficiency, according to Ken Palm, said it was fine, but I think it should have been better. Arizona deterred shots at the rim well, especially with Krivas in the game, and that was great. When they needed to break this game open, they were able to do so by protecting the rim and holding to low field goal percentages. At one point, Utah Tech was 3 of 13 from the field, but they had a ton of free throws. And what that means to me is the point of attack defense seems suspect. And I also think that the level of effort varied. And that isn't great. So the positive spin for you guys is essentially when Krivas is on the floor, teams don't score twos at a good clip. They changed their shot chart. That I mentioned it many times in the opening weeks. I took this over that Arizona, when he was on the floor 2 years ago, only conceded 36% of twos, and most teams only shoot twos from inside the paint. So that's fantastic. And that is huge because on the flip side, Arizona offensively shoots a ton of twos. They score a ton of twos, and they do so very efficiently, scoring 58 of their 93 points from two in this game after doing so very similarly in their first game against Florida. So doesn't matter the team you're playing. They're going to dominate the paint. The bad, though, that can be exploited is overhelping can lead to threes. If you're beaten and you help too far, teams can hit threes. And maybe more pressingly for Arizona, because they've done this both games, they've fouled a lot and conceded tons of free throws. Florida didn't make them pay, missed a lot of free throws. Utah Tech made a ton of free throws and early built a lead based on the free throw line as their primary source of attack. Arizona, coming up next, will take on Northern Arizona tomorrow. And tomorrow morning, I'll have a full episode up preparing you guys for an interstate battle with keys to the game predictions, which so far have been so good. I took Arizona to beat Florida. I expected a good game from Brayden Burries in this one, and Tobe Awaka to be featured prominently. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I look forward to chatting with you guys on that subject. But coming up next, I'm going to break down Arizona's win over Kansas on the gridiron that clinched a bowl game berth and talk about the ramifications of that. All that and more ahead on Locked On Wildcats. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay to take a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late-game push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. So, head to FanDuel.com and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Leaf Tulane with you here on Locked On Wildcats. Arizona and with Brent Brennan has now clinched a bowl game berth. That's the headline. What bowl games are possible to make? We'll discuss that soon. But first, let's talk about Noah Fafita and the crew and how they got there to beating Kansas and clinching their first bowl game berth under Coach Brent Brennan. Arizona scored first And when they do that, I typically expect it to be a front-running affair. It's not always the case, but in this game, I expected that because Kansas's defense has been suspect. Kansas's defense conceded in their prior games, 2 of their 3 prior games, 42 points, losing 42-17 in back-to-back games before beating a porous Oklahoma State team. So Arizona scored first, and I expected them to front run, like I said. But I was wrong. And Kansas then responded by scoring 17 unanswered points, and at one point built a double-digit lead, 17-7. But their defense was solid, but their offense stalled in the second half, managing just 3 points. Credit to Arizona's defense. I also think Kansas could have used a different game plan in the second half, became a little bit complacent. Uh, Aside from the point there, let's give you a statistical recap here. The teams were pretty evenly matched statistically, and Kansas was able to outgain Arizona slightly, 369 total yards to 323, and they also won the time possession battle, which is a big one in my opinion. I grew up watching a team that ran the ball frequently, almost always won time possession, and they were able to win the game with a multifaceted attack. We're not too reliant on one side, and that's why I'm always eager to talk about can you run to complement the throw and throw to complement the run? And Arizona's getting better at that. Since I've started this podcast, I talked about that as the keys in both. But when you're outgained, that was marginal. The time possession, 6 minutes, is not particularly marginal. So you could say Arizona was fortunate to claim this win, but there was a poise, there was an air of togetherness that impressed me. And I think Brent Brennan expressed that he had faith about that. But it's always hard to hear that and truly believe, but you can really see the belief of a team and the togetherness of a team, and that impressed me greatly. So, despite struggling offensively for much of the game, Arizona gave up 5 sacks. Fafita was pressured. The Wildcats gutted it out, and they found a way to show composure when it mattered most and clinch bowl eligibility and win a big game. Like, I know that's the topic of discussion. They got to 6 wins. They made a bowl game. We'll talk about which ones they could head to. It depends how the rest of the season goes. There's 3 more games on the schedule. And, who knows if they win any of those 3 if they lose this one. But the real topic is they won a difficult game. The games that have been difficult, Arizona hasn't won. And I think it's very important to note that they trailed in this game by double digits and still fought a way to win it. So let's talk about one of the stars that came up big and propelled the Wildcats into victory and actually scored the winner. It was Quincy Craig, the standout performer of the game, scored 2 touchdowns, including the game winner, and he provided late game runs that converted third downs, and third downs are certainly a key. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. So what I think is crucial about this is he and Mahdi provided help for Noah Fafita, who wasn't particularly great, but did tie the all-time passing record with 67 touchdowns. I think there's a world where Noah Fafita, I know I'm higher on him than many. I think there's a world where he's one of the best Arizona quarterbacks ever. And very few people are going to talk about it because, the winning hasn't been shown and the quarterbacks are often judged by winning. That said, it's not like he's playing with the same talent level as some of the prior very good Arizona quarterbacks. Nick Foles probably holds that torch. You look at some of the others. I think Noah Fafita has a real claim to claim that by when it's all said and done. Fafita, though, let's get back to the point, came up with big plays when they needed him most, and he helped carry Arizona, not in the way that he often does statistically, but when they needed it most, big plays were made. And that is a sign of a very good quarterback. And neither he nor Daniels were terribly prolific in this game, and Arizona was able to make bigger plays in bigger moments. Fafita came up with big plays. At the end of the game, they had a nice wheel route throw to the sideline that converted, moved the sticks, and Arizona in the 2-minute drill did look comfortable. And in Daniels' case, the second half, Kansas couldn't sustain drives. And I think that's the difference. There was a total shift from when they built that 17-7 lead to when the game ended in terms of how Kansas looked and how dynamic their offenses looked. Speaking of both offenses, Arizona, I don't think was particularly prolific, but there was at least an ability to move the rock, and Kansas stalled out. What hurt Daniels and Kansas was a big missed opportunity. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. The Jayhawks had a chance to extend their lead late and make the game be a touchdown game where the Fafita and the Wildcats had to win it. But the kicker, Marjan, missed a 30-yard field goal attempt with his first. You're going to be sad if you're a Kansas fan, and you're going to be happy if you're Arizona. You're going to say, oh, man, that guy stinks. It stinks for him. His first miss of the season, 30 yards. It's routine. He's made the long ones before in the game, and that gave Arizona the ball back. And there's just a feeling that goes in sports, right? When a play goes your way or against you and it changes momentum, that's what this felt like to me. It felt like, oh, Arizona's going to win this game now because they missed that field goal. They still had to go out and do it, but it just felt like a foregone conclusion it was going to happen because momentum swung and the home fans believed. So from there, Noah Fafita engineered the game-winning drive, and with less pressure on him, he was able to set the game up, and tying it was going to do enough to tie it at 20, but there was less pressure and less gravity in the situation because a field goal would do the trick. And instead, they were able to win the game because Quincy Craig had other ideas saying, no, who wants overtime? Let's win it right now. And Arizona won scrappily and without winning many of my keys. So let's revisit my keys. I gave good keys for basketball, and I thought I gave good keys in the Colorado game for football, but those keys were as follows: keeping Fafita upright, and he was sacked a lot, so that wasn't great. He wasn't his usual self either, so not winning that key. Third down defense, I think, was an important part, though. Kansas only went 6 of 17 on third down, so Arizona gets a win in that terms of in that key. And Arizona wasn't much better on their side of the ball, but like I said, the drive stalled out for Kansas in the second half, and Arizona was able to get off the field. Whereas in losses against BYU and against Houston, they were not able to get off the field. It was 10 of 16 on third and fourth down combined against Houston, and otherwise Arizona likely wins that game. Arizona, I also talked about the run game. Arizona ran pretty well to complement Fafita, 5.7 yards per tote, and they gained 165 yards on 29 carries as compared to 40 for 170 for Kansas, which again tried to run a lot in Arizona. Like, the film is out. Houston and BYU exposed Arizona's run defense. They did better against Colorado. That's a pretty decent average, but 140 attempts indicates that a lot of teams are going to try it. And Kansas, a fairly egalitarian attack in terms of run and pass, but Arizona was able to stifle them when it mattered most. And the final takeaway is they won a scrappy game where little went perfectly. And there was twists and turns. There was a circuitous route to victory. And that means a ton for a program that you didn't know where they'd be coming out of the bye week. They trounced the Colorado team. And like I said, this showed a lot of resiliency, a lot of resolve to find a way to come back from double digits down and have a goal and accomplish it when things looked bleak for Arizona. And now they're heading to the postseason. Things looked bleak when they were 1-3 in Big 12 play. They're now 3-3. They are now 6-3 overall. And things could have been great had they won those two close games. But winning a close game where there were twists and turns and there was not front running, there was a significant swing in momentum from leading 7-0 to trailing 17-7 to winning 24-20. There's a lot of twists and turns in that. And I think that speaks volumes to the culture that Brent Brennan has instilled. And we knew that this would be a good game. We thought Arizona would win, and they did. It wasn't as convincing. But here is a quote that I think really symbolizes what happened. This is from Coach Brent Brennan. We knew that it was going to be an incredible battle, but our players just kept responding. We kept finding ways to respond in some really tough moments. Down 10, we respond to a touchdown right before half. There were so many good things that we can be excited about. I know it wasn't perfect, and that's okay. We'll fix that. We're accountable for that. That's what the red line is. Brennan said that, which I think epitomizes the win. And I believe most likely destinations for the bowl, for those of you who are eager to find out that stuff and, maybe plan some trips and go out to the games, that the LA Bowl is a possibility against San Diego State. The Armed Forces Bowl against Army is another one that pops up when you dive into the possible matches. But I believe the most likely destination is the Sun Bowl, which Arizona's played a couple times, and the most likely opponent would be SMU. Neither team would travel particularly far, as it's in the state of Texas, and Arizona not too far of a drive or a flight over there. So those are possible destinations. And obviously these all change as projections with 3 games remaining for both sides of it. Arizona could play one of those games and it would maybe not play one of those opponents. But there's 3 more games. And the last part I'll ask you as a parting question is, what do you think the final regular season record will be for the Wildcats? And how does that impact which bowl the Wildcats attend? And how does it feel to be dancing? You guys are going to the bowl game. Let me know. And also, is there a preference which destination for the bowl game? And do you think Arizona goes 2-1 to finish the year? I think that may be the most likely. 1-2 is possible. 7-5 Does that feel like a success? Answer all those questions below. I'll try to engage with you there. Thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On Wildcats your first show, your first listen today. And for the second listen, check out Locked On Big 12. Drake Toll breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships and every game in between. Find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube, where you listen to your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.